up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. As you can see, I have a Honda in the shop, which is not normal for me. And helping a buddy out, Wes. You guys might have seen him on the channel before. And I'm going to build a downpipe for this thing. Now, here's the scenario. He changed the turbo, and the downpipe that was on it didn't fit anymore, and it was kind of a ragged piece of shit anyways. So I'm going to build a new downpipe for him. It has to go around a couple wastegates and then connect to his factory exhaust that goes all the way out the back. So I believe this is a 62mm Borg Warner turbo. It's a K20. He runs radials in the front. Got some suspension work done, good trans. That's really all I know about it. So I'm going to build him a downpipe out of stainless, and I'm going to do it here in my shop, which is kind of hard because I don't have a lot of fabrication equipment here. I have a Sawzall, a chop saw, and a welder. So I've got a couple 90-degree bends, and I'm going to see what I can do with it. Alright guys, I apologize in advance. My garage is kind of a disaster because I haven't had a chance to clean up from the YouTube call out yet. But anyway, here's what he had on there before. Some stainless and mild steel and some MIG welder and all kinds of stuff were going on here. So we got a few stainless bends here, a few clamps, a silicone coupler for the cold side, and that's one of his wastegate dumps right there that'll be going back on the car. I don't have anything to redo that right now, so that'll come at a later time. So if you look back here, I don't have a whole lot of room to work with. So you can see this is the other half of the downpipe that goes to the factory exhaust, and then I have to come off the back side of the turbo, make a tight bend, come down into this, and somehow miss a wastegate that's going to be in the way too. So I'm going to get this thing up in the air, get the exhaust propped up where it's supposed to be, and then we'll get started. Alright, so this is what we're starting off with for V-bands. These are 3-inch from Vibrant, and Borg Warner turbos normally use a different style of V-band clamp on the back side. So I'm going to see if I can make these fit. If not, I might be cutting the one off the old one, which I don't want to do because these Vibrant ones fit really nice, and then I can get a nice new weld on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach back there with half of one of the flanges and the clamp and see if it tightens up tight against the exhaust housing on the turbo. Alright, so it feels pretty solid, so what I need to figure out now is where this wastegate up here is going to go, and then cut my first bend. It actually doesn't look like it's going to be too terribly bad. His heater hoses are squished against the rear motor mount already, so I'm going to try to give him some more clearance on that, and then he'll have to replace his heater hose. So yeah, I'm going to just kind of wing it. I'm going to put an eyeball on it and see where we end up. So this wastegate mounts right here on the manifold. If you guys can't see this, I'll show it better later. So I'm going to get the clamp on it and mount it up here loosely and see where the downpipe used to go. It's kind of hard to tell, but it looks like it's going to be pretty damn tight. So let's figure this out. Alright, so what you can see is I've got the wastegate in place and the wastegate dump tube on it also. And it looks like I've got plenty of clearance around it, which is nice. It actually comes up high. So I'm going to leave it on there just for now. I'll take the dump tube off, and then we'll start making a downpipe. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do, I've got my V-band flange on here, is I'm going to measure how much distance I have to the front of the firewall to see how much room I have to work with, and that'll tell me where I need to cut the first 90 so that it doesn't run into the firewall after I cut it. Now this turbo sits at a really funny angle, which I know all the import guys like, but it really makes us fabricators have to work hard. No big deal, I'll get it on here. So I'll take this measurement and then we'll cut some tubing. Alright, so it looks like I've got maybe 5 inches before I get into these brake lines. Now the brake lines will move a little bit, but as you can see, the turbo sits at a backwards angle and it's not perpendicular with the engine either. So I'm just going to cut it as short as I can, and then I'll make up for the difference halfway across the manifold when I connect to the other side of the downpipe. Alright, so you can see I got the welder out. I use a Miller Diversion 165. This is fine for home projects, TIG welding, small things. So I've got my flange that goes on the turbo. I've got my first bend here. So you can see I cut it right at the end of the radius so I can get it in there real tight. And Vibrant has a little lip built in to their V-bands that this will sit down inside. It makes it really, really nice to weld. So I'm just going to tack it in about 4 spots right now. That way, if I have to take it back apart, I don't have to cut the flange off and put a new one on it. Alright, so I've got the first piece here, and I'm going to try to snake it in here and get the clamp back on it so I can see what we have to do next. Alright, so you can see I'm pretty close to my flange back here, and I'm actually not bad up there, so this is where it gets a little tricky because I have to guess where to cut this tube back and then add another bend to the end so it matches up with the old downpipe. So I'm going to start guessing. Alright, so this might take a few tries, but I put a mark on this where I'm going to cut it and then try to figure out my angle to get into the other section of the downpipe. Alright, so I've got it cut to length. I'm going to try to shove it back in here, and then I'll show you how I'm going to figure out the angle for the next piece. Alright, so you can see I've got my first bend coming out behind the manifold. And I'm going to put the wastegate back in here real quick to make sure that it fits. And then I've got to just have a small little kick and then a little piece of straight to get into my original downpipe section there. So actually not as bad as I thought it would be. I might put one more cut in it just to line everything up a little bit better. But first I'm going to throw the wastegate on to make sure that it fits right. Alright, so not as easy as I originally thought. The wastegate runs into the downpipe section, so I'm going to have to put it at a downward angle and then bring it back up and then kind of snake it into the original downpipe section. So what I need to do first is cut this right at the end of this 90, and I might pie cut it a little bit and then bring it back up, and then we'll have to face it back down again to go into the original downpipe. In the chop saw at a little bit of an angle, and once I cut this, I'll show you why I'm doing it this way. Alright, so you can see what I have here now are both of those guys are cut at a little bit of an angle. So maybe 10 degrees on each side. And what I'm going to do is I'll put them together opposite of each other, and that's actually going to make a 20-degree bend in my tube. Now, if you're doing more of an angle than 10 degrees on each side, you really need to put a bend in. But since I am short on bends, this is what we're going with. You can see we end up with a bit of a bend in our tube now, so we'll throw it back on the car and see what it looks like. Okay, so now the hard part. I only have a chop saw here and a Sawzall. I need to make a shorter bend than a 90. So I'm going to try this in the chop saw and see what I end up with. Now, I don't know what angle I need. I don't have any fancy tools to figure it out, so I am guessing. Let's see how good I am at guessing today. So that's what I ended up with, just a little bit of an angle. So I'm going to put the downpipe that I'm building back in the car and line this up with it and see if I can't get it to look like it's going to go into the old downpipe. Alright, so I've positioned the downpipe with the clamp snug to know that I have clearance for my wastegate. Now I'm going to take this back off so that I can get my angle right for the downpipe. Okay, so unfortunately my welding helmet is deciding to give up on me. It's flashing in and out, so now all I see is a bunch of stars. So as far as I'm going to get tonight is tacking this thing together. But I'm going to try to cut this one more bend so that I can at least have it complete. So when I come home tomorrow, I can just weld it all together. I'll bring my other helmet home. But here's what I got right now. So, got my first bend, and then my kind of cheater bend. And then this is what I need to do to get it to finish up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the widest point and the narrowest point and try to gauge my angle on this. And then what I'll do is I will tack the V-band flange on the other end of it and start fitting it in here. Now this is where it gets complicated. Putting a piece in between two other pieces is an absolute pain in the ass, but we're going to make it happen real quick. Okay, so here's what I came up with. 1 3/4 and 1 1/4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find straight here, and then I'm going to try to gauge 1 1/4 on the short side, 1 3/4 on the long side, draw my line, and then cut it. Alright, so pretty crude and simple. I'm going to cut along this line in the chop saw and see what I end up with. And I'm also going to cut it off here for length. Okay, so we've got this thing all tacked together. Unfortunately, with my welding helmet not working right, my tacks are not the best, but I think I just fixed it actually, so I'm going to clean this thing up real well before I weld it. So I'm going to try to fit it back in the car and, you know, snug everything down and make sure that everything clears, and then I'll weld it up. Alright, so here we go. You can see I got everything in here. V-band is good on that side. You got clearance for that wastegate. We're all tight here. So I'm good. Wes is going to have to heat wrap that wire harness back here. You can see it's already gotten hot and brittle. Might actually be better for him to reroute it if he can. And it's actually pretty loose, so he should be able to route it a little bit differently. But I'm going to go ahead and get this thing back out of here and then TIG it up. You guys don't need to see me remove it again, so I'll see you over on the bench. Alright, so out from behind the welding mask for a second, I've got the it's actually 4 pieces welded together now. I just have to weld the V-bands on the end. I'm going to let it cool down for a second so I can handle it a little bit better. Weld those on and then test fit it on the car for the last time.
12 seconds later.
Alright, the sun has gone down. I'm all hot and sweaty. I'm sure I have the cool band across my forehead from the welding helmet, but here's what we ended up with. This is our final product. The downpipe still a little bit warm. But that's it. So basically we had a 90, and then we cheated a bend here, and then that's part of a 90-degree bend as well. If I could go back and know how much bend I would have needed at the end, I would have put a smooth transition here, but you can see it still looks like it has a bend built into it. So no big deal there. So I will throw it back on the car real quick so you guys can see what it looks like, and then I'll end this video. Alright, so here's the finished product. I'm not putting the wastegate in right now because Wes is going to have to wrap some of the heater core lines, and then that wire harness that you can see back here is going to have to be relocated. It was already burning, so it's about time we relocate that. But that's it. It's all in there. The wastegate fits. Everything is looking good. This thing is ready to make some horsepower. So I'm sure Wes will want this redone next, since it's some MIG welded bullshit also. But yeah, it's in there. Altogether it took me probably 4 hours, and not really working too hard, but it's on there, it's done. This thing's got to go on the dyno in a few days, so Wes has to button up a few little things, but that's it. So as always, I want to thank you guys for watching, and possibly some more Honda content coming soon. So stay tuned for that. Be sure you check me out on Instagram, and as always, I have merchandise in the description below for sale. Thanks for watching.